Welcome back, fantasy nerds. On today's episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast, this is episode 10, by the way, we will be covering book 4 of David Farland's Runelords series, The Lair of Bones. As always, I'm your host, Rob Santos, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
Hey, everyone.
And our recurring guest, once again, Mr. Jarrod Livingston.
How dare you?
Yeah. Welcome back. Thanks for being a recurring guest so many times, Jarrod.
That's what I do.
Yeah, so, gentlemen, right off the bat, the first question I have for you about this book is, how long did you take from the time you sat down to the time you finished this book? I mean, so, I'm not talking about how many hours of reading. I mean, what was the time space? Did you, you sat down in the morning and you finished it the next day at noon? How was it? Because for me, it was pretty quick, relatively speaking, compared to how...
Mine was probably 8 hours total, split
8
into
hours total?
into roughly 2 sit-downs.
Let me check my Goodreads.
Dang.
I'll check my
You can check those stats? The reason I ask is because these last 3 books of the Runelords series, these took me, a week and a half to read them each because I was going on audiobook and I was having to listen while I could at work. This time around, however, I was able to actually read it from page 1 to the very last page, completely on text, on page. So it was a totally different experience for me this time around.
So it took me... I started reading it on December 30th and finished it on January 10th. But...
Oh, okay, so you had a wide window there.
But I only actually sat down to read it 4 times.
Yeah.
And I went 18% up, and then 28%, 60%, and
you have
and
exact
100%.
stats. Wow, that was a lot more accurate of an answer than I was looking for.
Well, it's Goodreads,
Dang,
They track
awesome.
it for you. So.
I gotta check out more of Goodreads. I hear lots of good things about them.
I don't know, I read in chunks, so...
Yeah, for me it was 2 single sessions, and it's been a long, long time since a book has actually gotten me to do that. It was a period of 12 hours, but I mean, it was I just sat down one morning, I knocked out 40% of it before lunch. I ate, I took a shower, that was about all I did. Maybe played a video game or two, but I mean, I finished it later that night, in the wee hours of the morning. It was pretty much one solid day of just reading.
Yeah.
And it was definitely paced that way too. That's why I was reading it like that.
Yes.
Definitely the final half, it'd be pretty hard to take a break in there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a very fast-paced book. I mean, even my memories of this, going back, it's been many years since I read The Runelords last, but I did read these books several times over back in the day, so I remembered it decently well. But things happened so much earlier in this book than I remembered. The biggest one was, I think it was in chapter 6 or 7, when the Consort of Shadows appears for the first time.
Yeah.
And kills Binisman. Well, kills. And,
yeah.
And I remember thinking that took place, maybe around 45 or 50% of the book. It's in chapter...
Really?
6,
No, because I just finished reading the book, and I still think it happened in 50, 60% of the way through.
So it
30
happens...
at the most. Are you serious? It was that early?
It happens on page...
You got the hardcover there. Hardcover? Oh my god. I can't speak words today,
The hardcover,
gentlemen.
yeah.
I forget how to brain.
It happens on page 96 out of 421. So it takes place a little less than 25%.
That's 23%. Yeah. Holy crap. Yeah, no, I mean, and I don't know. I was expecting it to be a lot more slower paced, kind of like, the previous 3 books have been. I was really, really impressed and pleased when I was, in the first few chapters. I believe it was chapter 3 or 4, and Gaborn and Averin and their party is already headed into the mouth of the world. Mm-hmm. They're actually going down there already. I was expecting that to start halfway through the book, at the end of the book, and it would be, the journey itself would be a lot shorter, but that was, I mean, the entire book was the journey, at least, for their characters. So, I mean, I think it started off fantastically. I really, really liked the atmosphere of this book at the beginning. It was very, I actually had some specific notes written about this here, right at the very beginning, in chronological order here. I really like the tone of this one. It could be just because I started and finished this one, as I've said, entirely on page, but the imagery in chapter 1 is awesome. Like, the atmosphere is perfect. You have the stars that are continuing to fall from the heavens. There's like a sort of hushed reverence to the whole thing. It kind of like, it felt honestly a lot like the beginning of A Memory of Light, in my opinion. There was this, like I said, this kind of hushed reverence, this kind of beautiful stillness, this kind of this sense of the deep breath before the storm or before the plunge, and it was really foreboding going into it. So that's, I mean, that might be part of the reason why I read so far and as fast as I did, you know?
Yeah, and so we still have, you know, the same sort of through lines in this story where we have Gaborn on his, you know, his quest, and then you have Bornson and Merima doing their thing. You have Erin Connell doing her thing, and you have Raja Ten. I want to get your opinions on, in general, how you thought each of those plot lines was executed, but in specific, Bornson and Merima and the whole quest to Ankara, because that, you know, while I did like this book, I gave it 4 stars on my most recent review on Goodreads.
Okay.
But I thought on this reading that Bornson and Merima and that whole Ankara plotline was a big letdown. It was a giant dead end.
No kidding.
They didn't achieve anything. You know, so they
well, I mean,
it takes them multiple books to get there. Yeah. Merima and Bornson both almost die on the way. Several times. Merima basically does die and then gets,
you know, they go through some very meaningful struggles along the way. They discover a lot about themselves and the nature of their marriage, I would argue.
They do. There's important character development that happens along the way, but there's no end result. The whole point was them going to Ankara to get help for the battle and to find Dalen Hammer. They get there. They find out Dalen Hammer's gone. And they get the help for the battle, but then the Incarns never show up in the battle.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I would argue that the most profitable end result of Bornson and Mirima's quest into Ankara would just be like recruiting the help of the Days. That in itself, I think, was pretty invaluable.
Yeah, but even then, what real value did Sarka Cole bring?
Oh, he provided valuable information in real time about what was happening across the world. Was it, or was it? Would you argue that it wasn't that valuable?
There was no, like, his actions had no bearing on the outcome of the battle against the Reavers.
I would argue it's just like this, like what it symbolizes. They are starting to turn the Days, as I mean, some of them. They're starting to reveal the humanity of these people, and in fact, that some of them might not agree with, you know, their charges, and they might not agree with their entire purpose, and they are going to then rebel and decide, okay, I'm going to do what I can to help humanity, because there might not be a humanity if we don't.
But we already have that with Iome's New Days.
I guess, yeah. I actually kind of forgotten about her. She was the young one, right? The young girl. She was like kind of like a scion still. She struck me as like a teenager.
Yeah, she was like 16.
Yeah.
I think the whole plot line with the Days could have been applied to any other character's days instead of Bornson and Merima. I mean, I guess they escaped Harlan's with the rune for Will as well, but
which
they
never used it. Yeah. The whole Bornson Merima plotline in this book felt like a lot of unfulfilled promises to me. There were several opportunities for really cool big things to happen, and none of them ever quite happened.
Yeah, I would agree with that much, definitely. Like, we didn't get as much gratifying, I guess, just plot lines that are tied up with Bornson and Mirima. It does definitely feel unfinished. I definitely agree with you there. Like, they went there, I was hoping to at least hear something about Dalen Hammer, to find some clue of his whereabouts, or what he's trying to do, or if he's even still alive, in fact. I mean, we assume so, but we don't actually know that, do we? I mean...
Well, so, if he's been alive this long, you have to assume he's still alive.
Although I will say I did really, really enjoy the interactions between Sir Bornson and the Storm King. That was his title, yes?
Yeah, the Storm King.
I mean, they had some pretty interesting banter back and forth, especially after, you know, they realized their mutual hatred for one another was kind of funny, and they were able to laugh it off. I was kind of, you know, giggling along in that scene there, too. But, yeah, as far as, you know, narratively speaking, you're right. That entire plot line really served no major narrative purpose, did it?
Yeah, it felt like a time killer for Bornstein and Murma to do something while all the other pieces are put in motion and laid out for the final battle, and then you bring Murma and Bornstein back for that.
And of course, they each played their very important parts in the final battle, especially Murma, of course.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. I mean, for the most part, I would agree 100% with what you're saying.
I would say unfulfilled for sure, especially given unfinished. The outlook that was presented in the first three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, we have Erin Connell. How did you guys feel about her plotline?
I get a little excited every time I see her name at the beginning of a chapter, because I know we're going to get more information about what I want to know about, which is, the one true world. I want to know more about the other world and everything that's happening there. I want to know more about the locus. Yeah, is that how you pronounce it? Thank you. I want to know more about all of these things. I'm not really too invested in the struggle with the Reavers anymore, because starting around, the end of book 3, I was really becoming convinced that the Reavers are not really the big problem. They're just kind of trying to share the earth with mankind and not able to share it. I never really got the feeling that they were the Trollocs, or the Orcs. They were not the big end game. They weren't the final boss. And so I really just wanted to get back. Whenever I saw Erin Connell's name, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to hear more about the owl. We're going to hear more about the glories, So I was excited for most of her scenes. And following her along there with King Anders and his whole retinue was eerie, I guess. It was a little unsettling.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing the kind of powers that King Anders was expressing, the things that he was claiming. It kind of made me a little afraid for Gaborn specifically, because of course, as we know now, he was, King Anders was supposedly claiming to be the new Earth King.
Yep.
I mean, I thought Anders felt a little transparent, but...
Did you? I don't know. Like, as soon as Erin Connell was that suspicious of him, I immediately thought, this is misdirection. We're going to look for somebody else in his immediate retinue.
I mean, there was certainly a little ambiguity in, like, oh, is it Anders or is it Kellinor? Like...
Yeah, so I was thinking, okay, maybe Selenor, but no, I was just right away with how suspicious she was of King Anders. I was immediately wary. I was like, oh, this is a red herring. But no, I mean, it turned out to be King Anders, right?
Yeah, and Kellinor changed quite a lot from when we met him in Brotherhood of the Wolf to the end of this book. He becomes a lot more unlikable.
Yeah, you could say that.
A lot.
Yeah, he was definitely a sympathetic character at the beginning.
Definitely a dysfunctional relationship with his father.
He made some questionable
otherworldly powers aside.
Yeah.
I mean, this is your wife, right? Okay, you gotta at least trust her a little bit. He just seems to completely dismiss anything that she has to worry about concerning his father. He's got this huge blind spot in his life where his father is concerned.
Well,
but it was good to see him eventually overcome
character,
that.
And how much is that influence from Anders?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, for example, when I saw him craft that land bridge, or I didn't see him clearly, I read him crafting that land bridge to Karis. I was like, oh, he may actually be legit. Uh-oh. That was my first big uh-oh moment. And that was, of course, at that moment, Gaborn is really, really deep in the underworld. He's on his way to the Lair of Bones, and it's like, is he going to be totally screwed?
But then immediately after he builds that bridge, and Kellinor goes to Erin, he's like, "Look, you can't even deny it now." And she's like,
Erin
"I didn't
had a
see
good
him
point.
move the earth. I saw him use the wind."
Yeah, that was a very good. That was a very, very good point that she made. So I was, I was still on her side, right in that moment. But that just the imagery in that scene and as it unfolded, I mean, in the moment I was concerned. But you're right. There was an off comment by Erin immediately afterwards that made me go, "Oh yeah, fair point. Okay." Still suspicious, that's for sure. So yeah, that's basically what I felt about Erin Connell. I like her, and I want more of her because I felt like her storyline was more vital to the second arc that comes eventually with Scions of the Earth. So that's why I was so interested in her, at least.
So have you read any summaries or looking into things ahead?
I will admit, in preparation for this podcast, I went ahead and I at least looked at the names of the next books and, the title of that second entire novel arc, books 6, or I should say 5 through, it's going to be 8, 9?
Well, it'll be
Tale
9.
of Tales is yet to be released, yeah. But, I mean, I figured that we are going to be closing off the Runelords, the first arc, so I should at least, be able to speak about, very vaguely, about the second arc. So I did a little bit of research, but not much. Definitely not much.
I was just curious because she, without spoiling anything, her daughter plays a large role.
Oh yeah, well I imagine Gaborn's son plays a huge role too.
Yeah, Gaborn's two children and Aaron Connell's daughter are the main characters in the second series.
Falion is the name of the first child,
and Jazz
as the second child. Yeah, okay. Yeah, from the get-go, I figured that those children are going to be important. I totally forgot about Aaron Connell's child. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dang. Okay. I'm a little more excited now for the second arc.
Yeah, well, judging from what you've said about what you were most invested in
mm-hmm.
these front 4 books, I have a feeling you're going to really like where it goes in the last half because it is much more focused on sort of the netherworld politics and the loci and the battle between the Raven and the Glories and
the shattering of the one true world into all these millions upon millions
goes
of
into the deep lore of this universe that Farland has.
Sweet. See, that's what I like. I'm always searching for the deepest lore. If there's something deeper, I immediately I guess it's kind of a flaw for me, but I stop caring about the smaller stuff. I want to go deeper and deeper every time, So
Jarrod, what were you most invested in?
I mean, as a single character, I guess I would say Mirama.
Yeah.
Honestly, looking back over the 4 books, I never really felt that invested in Gaborn's journey.
Sure.
So I guess that's what I was least invested in. I would say some of the lore. Certainly, Aaron's scenes into the netherworld were extremely interesting to me. I don't know if I'd say heavily invested, though. It's hard to say.
Yeah. So I have a comment about Gaborn, and I think this kind of plays into what a lot of readers, the experience they have with these this first 4-book series, is that Gaborn is ostensibly the main character. It is the Earth King series, and Gaborn is the Earth King.
Yeah.
But Farland spends so much time away from Gaborn that it's very easy for Gaborn to get lost in the mix, and because he doesn't have as emotionally charged or as immediate a conflict, everything with him is big, large scale, save humanity.
Yeah,
it's very removed and abstract. Whereas things like Borenson's plotline, he has very immediate moral and personal and interpersonal conflicts that hit home, and we get a lot of time in his head, as much, maybe even more than we get in Gaborn's head. So as the series goes on, it's easy for Gaborn to get kind of lost in the mix and pushed to the side, which I think is a very interesting decision Farland made as the author, was that this is a short series, all things considered, and it takes place over a very small time frame.
Yeah, it's only a few.
But we have 6 or 7 main point of view characters?
Yep.
I mean, we got Gaborn Iome, Borenson Murama, Raja Ten, Aaron Connell,
and
that's and of Aaron, and that's not even counting Roland, so that's a lot of characters for a relatively small space. And so I don't think that it gives Gaborn's character enough room to really hit home.
Say grow. Okay.
Yeah. There isn't enough room for a big impact on the reader in Gaborn's journey.
I agree.
And
I think
the specific conflicts with some other characters work better in that limited space, specifically Aaron Connell and Borenson and Murama.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think Gaborn being treated as the symbol that he is, with the magnitude of his struggle and how much he kind of has to sacrifice out of his own personal life, he's less it kind of takes away a lot of his relatability, which of course you can get out of other characters like you've listed, like Sir Borenson and Mirma and their difficulties with their marriage as they try to figure out how they're going to treat it. Characters like Gaborn, like Raj Aten, they're larger, they're more spectacular, but because of that, they do take away a lot of relatability. And I can absolutely see exactly what you're saying. I wasn't, as a person, invested in Gaborn and his character so much as I was just invested in his mission, right?
Yeah.
He was a little more important to me with his mission than he was as a character. I didn't really, I have a note about Gaborn here. It's actually at the very end, but this is a good spot to insert it here. It really feels that like he's grown into his own and matured as a character, but I mean, to me, like, to be totally honest, he kind of still feels like the same character that we met at the beginning of the first book.
Yeah.
Like I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just, it feels as if no matter how willing Gaborn, the Earth King, is willing to suffer and sacrifice for his people, I'm still pretty certain that Gaborn, the lovesick and naive Prince of Herodin, would still have done all of these same things. So I don't feel like he grew as a character as much as he did as a symbol.
I would agree with that, and I think a key part of that is that from the get-go, from the beginning of the Sum of All Men, Borenson really didn't have any flaws.
Borenson?
Excuse me, Gaborn. Gaborn didn't really have any flaws.
You got me worried that I was talking on this whole tangent about the wrong character.
Yeah, that's my bad. He was already kind-hearted and has been raised the right way and studied the proper things and goes about his life in a moral way. He didn't have like a real killer character flaw.
Yeah.
And the closest we get to that is his
ignorance.
Maybe
kind of
ignorance, but
hero
more specifically his eagerness to see Rajaten as an enemy. But
okay, yeah.
But that doesn't really land as a flaw when Rajaten is the enemy.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. Like he does kind of have a tendency to kind of personify all of his problems in this single opponent who is Raj Aten. He definitely overcame it a lot for book 4, but you're absolutely right. I would say in books 1 through 3, I mean, a lot of times I found myself saying, okay, Gaborn, I know you hate the guy and he is evil, but there is a bigger picture. You need to stop focusing on this one man much.
I mean, kind of, but he should, at the same time, he should have been like focusing on Rajaten.
Well, Farland did make it kind of convenient for him, didn't he? Like Raj Aten was really.
It would have been much more interesting had your early prediction or your early hope, Rob, that Rajaten would want to switch sides and become like the warrior of the earth.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Had he made that choice, and Gaborn still insisted on seeing him as an enemy, that would have become a real, deadly character flaw, and that could have made things very interesting.
I just felt like he was going through the same problems in book 4 that he was in book 1, it felt like.
Yeah, I can see that. He's still, I mean, and I guess it kind of makes sense when you take into fact, like, the entire length of the narrative. Chronologically speaking, it only takes place over this, like, from the beginning of book 1 to the end of book 4, I'm pretty sure is less than a month, right?
It is. It's
only like 3 or 4 weeks.
They specifically say it's, like, less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, they say something like previously had been less than 2 weeks, but I got the feeling that their journey into the underworld took quite a bit longer.
No, it's 3 days. 3 days.
3 days? Oh, then again, they do all have endowments of metabolism, I suppose.
Yeah. Gaborn talks about how it feels like it's been,
Yeah, right. Maybe that's where I'm getting that from.
Months and months, because he's got, like, by the end of it, something
times.
like 50 endowments of metabolism.
I think he's got over 100 by the end.
He guesses, but there was one point where...
No, I think one of his facilitators specifically said to Iomi that we've endowed him with over 100 at this point.
The problem with that is in the epilogue, it specifically talks about the time frame of the year going on and how many years Gaborn aged in that.
Right.
And it was
Something
like
did not add
50
up to
years in 1 year. So he can't have had over 100 endowments.
I remember having a specific problem with the math in the epilogue because it didn't quite line up with 100 times the metabolism. That might have been the exact moment.
What's one metabolism endowment? How much faster?
It doubles. So it's like if you have 2 endowments of metabolism, you age 3 days for every day you live.
Because you still have to add it on top of your own metabolism, right? And part of the equation. Yeah. Speaking of the endowments of metabolism, there was a pretty cool, I guess, application for them, or like that I hadn't even considered. I don't want to call it an application. I just can't think of the proper word at the moment. But I didn't stop to consider the effect that it would have on the gestation period of a human baby, of a human fetus. When near the end of the book, of course, it said that Gaborn's son was born so much earlier than normal because of Iomi's endowments of metabolism. I had a really cool moment where I went, oh, I guess that does kind of make sense. Why hadn't I considered that?
Yeah.
And I guess that does give us a really convenient character upon which, to have a protagonist in the second half of the entire sequence of Farland's Runelords series. So that was a cool little bit of, I don't know, world building that Farland included in there.
Yeah, I mean the work he does with the whole system of endowments and dedicates over the course of the series is just so rich. It's so
you learn more about the system with each book.
Yeah.
New applications.
He still finds questions to answer that you hadn't even thought of answering or asking, I should say, yet.
And so I have another question on this topic.
Sure.
Do you feel like... Oh, okay. Well, actually, I guess there's a kind of a precursor question to that. Do you think there was a conflict that needed to be solved over the course of these 4 books regarding the use of endowments? Like, did you feel like there was a moral, actual conflict?
Shoe to drop? Was I waiting for like some sort of consequence hiding in the wings? Is that what your question is?
I don't think necessarily a consequence, but more something like
waiting in the wings.
That the characters would have maybe chosen, no, this is morally wrong. I will not take endowments.
I mean, that has been in the back of my mind this entire time. There was no really one specific moment where I thought, okay, hold on, is this actually cool or not? But I mean, from book 1 through the end of book 4, I did have that small voice in the back of my mind, asking like, are they really in good conscience, like, taking dozens of endowments each? I mean, they're consigning dozens and dozens of people, in some case hundreds, in Rajattan's case thousands of people, to a life, in the case of endowments of stamina or endowments of grace, just a life of torture. Like, what kind of effect does that have on the human mind to know that this many people are sacrificing that much to help you? I mean, I guess it kind of grants you the onus of responsibility and power, and it kind of lends you a measure of dedication to your cause, because you don't want to feel like you're doing this in vain. But I mean, I was kind of conflicted with certain characters' complete willingness to take dozens of endowments of the hard endowments: metabolism, eyesight, grace, stamina. I mean, these are major things to be doing to other people.
Jarrod, what do you think?
Well, I do think Iome has a pretty big moment where she faces the moral question of betraying Gaborn's own morality versus what she views as probably saving mankind.
Yep. That's where Iome kind of won a little bit of more respect in my books, at least.
And so my follow-up question then is, do you think that the sort of end result that not only Iome but Gaborn in specific comes to, this idea that he's okay with receiving endowments as long as they are willingly given?
That was Iome's decision, not Gaborn's.
Well,
right?
But Gaborn came to this decision back in Brotherhood of the Wolf. When, before they're riding to Karis the first time, he says, I will only accept from people who understand that this is an act of war, and and all of that. Do you think that is an acceptable moral solution to this quandary of the giving of endowments and the keeping of dedicates?
Yeah.
Sure, I believe that people should be allowed to give up, I mean, this is my own personal belief, but people should be allowed to give up whatever they want for their cause, if it's a just and right cause.
Okay.
I like, as long as the characters themselves are conflicted about it, and this is, I guess, kind of, sadistic in an odd way, but as long as the characters themselves who are receiving the endowments feel bad about it, I'm fine with it. Does that make sense? If they were just taking them and it's like, yes, this is my due course and everybody owes this to me, I would not like that character. But if the character, like a Born, is legitimately conflicted about it, and I feel like they will treat those endowments with the respect they deserve. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't know if I would say necessarily they need to feel bad about it, but those Runelords, in my mind, should be aware of the responsibility that comes with it.
Right.
And not only be aware of, but accept the responsibility.
I could see. Well, do you think? I don't know enough about the magic system to really discuss the feasibility of this path. But what if it was required that anybody who was going to receive one of the major beneficial endowments be required to live without their endowment for a little while, just so that they can appreciate the sacrifice that their dedicates are making? Is that even feasible? Is that possible with a magic system like this? Can you give away an endowment and then receive yours back?
No, you have to kill the dedicate.
You have to kill a dedicate, eh? Yeah. I guess that's kind of a major... Yeah, that's kind of a
major... Or kill the Runelord, rather.
Yeah. Still, though, I wish there was a way that a lot of these characters who are just receiving all these endowments had a way to, appropriately contextualize... the sacrifice that their dedicates are
losing
making.
A greater endowment.
I hearken back to what I said, I don't know how many podcasts ago now, in this specific series. It kind of raises the question as to who the real heroes are. Are they the Runelords, or are they the dedicates who are sacrificing so much?
I think that's part of what we get with Chamois. Chamois.
Yeah.
And
Dearborn Hawks.
I don't know. Isn't that the whole point of her storyline?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I was really kind of I don't know, unfulfilled with the whole Chamois thing.
No, I think Jarrod's nailed it there. I think that was the entire point of her plotline, is to show us the heroism of the dedicates, of the people who are making these decisions.
Yes. I was just disappointed, I guess, and this is kind of stupid, but I was just disappointed that it had to be Chamois. I was like, I feel like maybe we could have got a whole new character. In I don't know. I guess it was kind of a neat way to tuck away her character and still give it meaning. But I don't know. I kind of liked Chamois near the beginning, so I was kind of bummed out that she had to consign herself. She didn't have to. That she chose to consign herself to that.
I think then we get the contrasting how you can abuse it with Rajaten's facilitator guy, whose name I forget, who is basically trying to lie to the...
Oh, I have his name written right here. I have a whole paragraph written about that slimy eel. Hold on a second.
That's kind of where you get the opposing view, right?
Yeah.
Taroush, yeah. Right. What I said was, damn, Taroush is a slimy prick, isn't he? Though, admittedly, I read the scene where he describes in salivating detail all of the foods that the orphans will get if they give up their endowments. I was really, really hungry myself when I was reading that scene. As I said, I read these books. I read this book for hours straight. So in that moment, I was close to thinking.
And then you kind of
give my own eyesight for some of what he's talking about right now.
You kind of get the whole thing where his greed is kind of used against them, where...
Yeah.
By being so, ravenous and unforgiving and getting as many dedicates as you can, by doing so, that causes the downfall of the whole thing, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I loved that part. I loved it. The guy's name was Balamar.
Yeah, Balamar.
When he turned out to be an assassin, I was like, oh my god, this is awesome! I didn't even see that coming. I had no idea. That took me completely by surprise, but it was a welcome surprise, definitely.
It's another, I think, great example of just applications and potential repercussions of the magic system that you don't really think about right away.
Yeah. Farland has thought of everything. Hasn't he? He's thought of everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's really well done in most ways. I brought up my main gripes. But maybe going to the flip side, do we want to go over our 3 favorite scenes each?
I do. There's still a couple things I wanted to talk about before that, just about how the book ended. A couple of gripes that I have, I suppose. It's mostly with Averin's character. She just didn't feel genuine to me. Is that the word I want to use? Perhaps. She definitely, especially towards the end, she felt more and more like a Mary Sue. I just felt like there was no wrong that this girl can do, and that she's already saved the day before we even got to the end of the book. Hold on again. And Drew, I asked you this question while I was reading this book. I sent you a Facebook message. But how old is Averin? Like we know for a fact she's 10.
Yeah, because she meets her dad. Her dad has been in the
that's
Reaver
her
prison
father?
for a decade.
I didn't actually realize that was her father. I just thought he was a mentor. He was a trainer.
Her father's bones were in there.
Oh, that's right. Her father's
he
bones.
was
That's
captured
right. She only
10
missed
years
him
ago.
by. Yeah, and she only missed him by like a very small amount of time, right?
Yeah,
That was kind of the heartbreaking thing there. Yeah, no, specifically about Averin though. Hold on, it's okay. Averin's. Oh, I did call it, by the way. I think I may have mentioned this earlier in one of the other podcasts. I hope I did, because I did see that. I kind of see this coming, but her self-appointed task was to protect the Reavers.
Yeah, I asked you specifically about that, and I may have led you on a little bit too closely to the answer.
It was definitely in my head from very, very early on.
Okay. Yeah.
But it still could have been the fact that you were leading me along a little bit, perhaps. But specifically with Averin, it's just she didn't feel, I don't know, like she had any flaws. Like, okay, like on one hand, it was really gratifying to see her kind of exploring her Earth powers and how, they're unique to her. But like she's what at this, and in my notes I said she's 9 or 10, but there's a moment where she's dangling from a great height. She's being chased by Reavers intent on killing her. She's able to retain the presence of mind to not only count Gaborn's free fall into the lake, but to do the math in her head on the fly to kind of gauge the the distance down. And even when she lands, she's the only one in the entire party, Businessman included, who has the presence of mind to realize, oh hey, wait, we should kill this Reaver that followed us, because if the others don't smell its death scent, they will follow. I mean, it just kind of seems like way too advanced of a thought process for a character who's supposedly just like a 9 or 10-year-old girl, right?
Yeah.
Granted, she has endowments of wit, right? So, or endowment.
Doesn't she have some metabolism too at that point?
She does. But it is fair to point out that she feels much more like a maybe 17 or 18-year-old than a 9 or 10-year-old.
Well, she reads like one, definitely.
Yeah.
She reads like somebody who's very, very intelligent and mature and developed. But I mean, it's like, again, it was only just days, or I guess maybe at this point weeks ago, that she discovered she has the potential to be an Earth Warden. But now in the deepest depths of the underworld, in the heart of the Reaver's power, she's using her magical staff to carve the seal of creation, the seal of the deep. I mean, she bores a hole backwards to the surface, to save the day to bring Gaborn along. Granted, Gaborn lent her a bit of energy or power for that that feat there, but to me it feels like she was immediately perfect, and she knew her way around everything, and she had no flaws. So Averin to me kind of felt a little Mary Sue.
That's fair. And actually, I have one more gripe.
Sure.
And
Let's get gripes out of the way.
Easily from what you were just talking about. We were talking about how she makes the seal of creation and the seal of the deep, and and so my gripe here, and I don't know if this is just because I'm reading the first edition hardcover. I don't know if these things were fixed in later editions or what.
Okay.
But there are so many typos and and mix-ups in this book. Multiple times there were scenes in Bornson's point of view where suddenly it's like, oh, Gaborn did this. Where he clearly just wrote the wrong name in.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I didn't notice any moments like that myself.
And the thing with Averin is that when she first starts making the seal, it's called the Seal of Life. And then 2 paragraphs later, it's the Seal of Creation.
It was... I accidentally wrote down the Rune of Life when I was making my notes here, and I had to change it to the Seal of Life. But then I went back and saw a Seal of Creation, the Seal of the Deep, and I was like, wait a second.
So their names changed like mid-page, and the other really big one was the prison fortress in South Crothan, Raven's Gate, right?
Raven's Gate.
It's where they were gonna lock away Erin Connell when they decide that she's psycho. Okay. And I mean, like, and this is the name of a chapter. There's a chapter called Raven's Gate, and let me see if I can find it. Chapter 21, Raven's Gate. At the end of the book, in those last couple of chapters with Aaron and King Anders and Kelnor and all that, suddenly that castle's called Ravenscroft.
Croft?
One word, Ravenscroft. Whereas Raven's Gate was 2 words. But they're talking about the same fortress. So there are things like that in this book that they're just like little continuity errors.
How did you catch something like that? In a million years, I would never have caught something.
There are a lot of them, though, and that's the thing, and it went all the way back to the early books where I talked about how the map of Indopal had the country called Mutes, but then they at turns called it Mutaya or Muyatin, and never ever called it Mutes, and then in the 3rd book suddenly the map gets updated to Mutaya, and then a new country gets added to the map called Muyatin, where he like retconned it. So I'm curious to see if in later editions of this book these little things are fixed.
Well, who knows?
Yeah, I feel like in the Kindle
edition, if you're listening to this in the future and you have later editions, that
would be probably the most recent edition is whatever's on Kindle, because those update.
Yeah, I mean I have the e-reader right in front of me. I suppose I could check.
So that's my last gripe, I guess. It was just not a well edited book.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. I mean, if I would have noticed that, it would have bothered me too. Definitely. I definitely would not have noticed until you had said something.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to get out of the way? You did, Drew. You mentioned you wanted to talk in depth about the Consort of Shadows. Have you had your chance?
I haven't really, but I was going to get there in one of my favorite scenes.
Oh, okay. So. Do you guys just want to dive into the favorite scenes then?
Sure.
Okay. First I want to preface this by saying that I actually totally forgot about our favorite scenes, and I have been hurriedly writing them as I've been having this discussion. I have 2 out of 3, so I do have 2 to list.
Okay. Well, I can kick it off then if you guys want to take a minute to. Yeah. So.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll start then with the that. First, it's really like a sequence, starting when the Reavers corner Gaborn and Iome and Binisman and Averin, and they start that chase, which culminates in the appearance of the Consort of Shadows and Binisman's presumed death. And it starts with that scene in the cavern specifically because Gaborn, he's using his earth powers, he's on top of things and all that, and the Reavers like trying to stick his Reaver gig in there, and then the Wild goes and breaks the Reaver's skull, and they drag that one out. And then the next Reaver in, you never actually see the Reaver. All you hear about is that a Night Gig absolutely teleports through the hole and hits Gaborn. It's so fast that not even Gaborn with his Earth senses could dodge it. Mm-hmm. And that's your first instance where you're like, that's a little different. We know Reavers are fast. We know they're faster than humans. Yeah. But that was crazy fast. And like it's from Iome's point of view, and she thinks something like if she didn't see Gaborn go flying, she wouldn't have believed her eyes that it moved that fast.
You know what? The more you talk about it, the more that this specific moment is starting to come back to me. I do remember, and it was from Iome's point of view for sure, when this Reaver was moving so fast that not only with her endowments of metabolism could she not see it, but she would not have believed it if she hadn't seen the Earth King helpless against it.
And so
I'm starting to remember that,
That sequence culminates with the Consort of Shadows finally appearing and Averin recognizing him, and then he absolutely wrecks Binisman. And
Binisman got.
There are these little things that build up over the course of the book with the Consort of Shadows where you're realizing, like, wait a second, this Reaver has endowments of brawn and grace and metabolism.
Yeah, that's a slow reveal too, and I like the way Farland handled that.
Yeah, and that's the my second scene is actually when Averin and the Consort of Shadows meet again in the Lair of Bones at like the throne of bones, and they have this conversation, and there's really interesting character development that goes on with the Consort of Shadows, and it's something that he could only do with what he did with Averin's character in the previous book, where he uses her as a window into, these are not just monsters bent on killing. They have their whole society, and they are individual people or entities not people, but and so we see the Consort of Shadows, who is a warrior, who is, dangerous and all this stuff, but has a spark of, I don't want to say humanity because it's not humanity, but a personality and a thirst for autonomy. And he has this kind of crushing ending, no pun intended, to his plot line where
nice.
Obviously he gets crushed by the earthquake, but he is ready to make that step and sort of meet Averin on common ground, but he has a rune of compulsion set upon him by the one true master, and he cannot do it.
Really?
Yeah, he tells Averin when she's trying to convince him, he tells her I cannot do this. I have been compelled.
Oh, that's what he meant by that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then so my I don't know, I'm not gonna. I was gonna go look up that quote in the book, but if you guys remember it, I won't bother. But my third scene is probably obvious, but it's Rajaten's death, and
I mean it's been coming for 4 books.
It has been coming for 4 books. It was kind of a neat way for what seemed like a real impossible problem in a couple of ways, because he's not only an invincible Runelord, but he's now also a Flame Weaver, and if you strike down his mortal body, he becomes a pretty much an unstoppable elemental. So they refrain from killing him, but chop off all his limbs, wrap him in multiple sets of chainmail, and throw him in the lake.
Toss him into the lake, and the water wizards will deal with him from here on out. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that scene. It was an interesting way to get rid of Rajatan, and I didn't see that coming. I wasn't sure how to get rid of Rajatan. It was creative, but I don't know. I kind of wanted him, and this is where you kind of question your moral compass a little bit. I wanted him to go down fighting a little more, and there wasn't a whole lot of fight involved with Rajatan's death, was there?
Yeah, he was trying to, and then Murrama got him with the arrow.
With the arrow, yeah. So I was kind of hoping he would go out in a blaze of glory, if you'll pardon the expression there. And he just kind of, instead it was just kind of dark and morbid and satisfying, but I don't know, a little unsettling. But it was creative, so I'm fine with it, because it was a really creative way
makes sense
to get to
from
solve
a logistical perspective.
So, Rob, do you have your 3 scenes?
Yeah, I could list them. So, what comes to mind right away was just Gaborn fighting the Reavers in the darkness, in the absolute darkness, with only the light from their runes to guide his way.
Yeah.
It definitely harkens back to Rajatan's whole fight with the Reavers in Book 3. It was just, I mean, aesthetically speaking, that scene would be awesome on the big screen or to watch somehow.
Yeah.
It was definitely a very spectacular scene. My second favorite scene, and once again, I want to make sure I state that I didn't have a whole lot of time to choose these. I might have different answers if I'd actually thought ahead, but just coming from first impressions of what I remember of the book, my second favorite scene would be King Anders summoning the land bridge to Karis. I mean, to me, that was like I said earlier in this episode, that was my first moment of, oh crap, he might actually have something. He might be onto something, and Gaborn might be in legitimate trouble. But then, as you said, it was kind of nullified immediately afterward by Aaron Connell's good point of saying, oh, I didn't see the land moving, I just saw the influence of the wind. But yeah, just because of how hard that hit me in the moment specifically, that was a very visceral reaction from me. And my third and it's actually not a scene, it's just one line, and it's actually an epigraph, the epigraph of the final chapter of the book, which just says, and I have it written down right here, the chapter is called Home. It's chapter 43, and the last, hold on, right here, okay. Home is anywhere we find peace, a saying of Ropehaven. And aesthetically speaking, to me, it kind of accomplishes in the reader's mind something akin to like a cinematic wide shot, something like the camera pulling back to gaze over the world as a whole. Because I mean, these chapter epigraphs, as they go along, they're getting simpler and they're getting warmer, and it's just, you get this kind of feeling of peace and contentment out of them. So that last chapter epigraph, as the entire novel's coming to an end, home is anywhere we find peace, it just felt nice. It felt like a perfect note, like the final note of a great opera. It was just, to me, I felt like that was the perfect line to insert there.
Just as a side note, I really like the chapter epigraphs and how they kind of relate to what's happening in the chapter. And, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, Drew...
Can I
go on?
tack on to that? This is something that I kind of mentioned, I think, in one of the very first Runelords episodes, but how these books are broken up into days, and each day has like a sort of subtitle, where the first day of the first book is called A Wonderful Day for an Ambush. You know, and they're subtitles for the days like that. The subtitles in this book are so cool. So Day 4 in the month of leaves is A Day of Descent, like DESC, you know, like E-N-T. Going down, which, you know, makes sense, right? You know, they're heading into the underworld, but also it has, you know, more connotations for like the impending doom of the world. And then Day 5 in the month of leaves is The Darkness Deepens, and then Day 6, the final one, is called When True Night Falls. And I remember the first time I read this book and I saw it subtitled out, and I was just, oh man, it was so cool.
You get some chills?
Yeah.
Yeah. that was pretty cool. Like, and again, like, speaking of, you know, just the aesthetic, like the chapter headings, or I should say the epigraphs, the way the series begins and the way the series ends, I noticed something, Rob, kind of cool. At the very end of the narrative, and by the very end, I mean in the last chapter, during one of the final scenes, we get again the return of these effigies to the Earth King, these little figures that are spread everywhere, and it kind of brings the narrative around full circle, because that was, in, if you remember, that was one of the first images we got of this entire series. That was in book 1, chapter 1. The first page was describing these effigies to the Earth King. So I found it really cool and really quaint that one of the final scenes would be describing these effigies once again. It did definitely give it a feel of a full circle journey, for sure.
Jarrod, do you have your 3?
So,
so one of them's overlapped with Gaborn's kind of final battle, where he only sees by the light of the runes on the Reavers.
We both like that one, yeah.
So that'd be one. The other two, I don't know. I think I kind of have different tastes from you guys, where I kind of go for like the more quieter moments, but the two that stuck out for me kind of both have to do with, I think, as a reader, realizing what a character is going through, kind of their struggle. So the first one was when Averin gets thrown in with the prisoners.
Oh, the Lightbringer,
and she and you know, she sees like her father's bones. And granted, I'm sort of biased, having like family death. I can like relate to what she's probably going through.
Yeah,
sure.
But as a character, you kind of realize, like, as a 10-year-old, she has a lot on her shoulders. You know? And in a related manner, my final scene was with Born, when he comes across like the old stronghold where
Urban,
I
think it was called
Orden
Gaborn had that book, and he's sort of like leafing through it, and he's kind of like realizing the enormity of the history that's behind him, that he's responsible for. And so that's just kind of another moment where you realize, like, you know, what they're going through.
Yeah. And he found the Reaver spear, or what are they called?
The Reaver dart?
The Reaver lance?
Reaver dart.
Reaver guard.
Dart.
Dart, thank you.
And actually, gonna bring that up, that's another, like, inconsistency where they're called Reaver darts all throughout the book, and then suddenly at the end they're called Reaver gigs.
Yeah, because I noticed the night gig earlier in the book, and I was, what the hell is a gig?
Yeah.
And then near the end there was suddenly a Reaver gig. I did questioned that in the moment too. I was like, wait, I haven't heard of this before. But I don't know. Maybe we give benefit of the doubt and assume it has multiple names. I don't know.
I would say in general, one thing. I mean, this is kind of a wrapping up point, but one thing I really like with Farland's writing is he has these quiet moments that are interspersed with these very like cinematic, crazy, violent scenes, and I think it makes you appreciate them more. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that contrast, that juxtaposition between chaos and kind of peace, but still have characters go through these major defining moments in their lives. Mm-hmm. Something that's really, really interesting to read. It doesn't keep you breathless all the way through for 150 pages like some authors like to do, which is great in its own way, but I don't think would have been appropriate for the Runelords. So yeah, I agree with what Jarrod said. It's nice to have these kind of moments to take a breath in between, right? I did think of one actually while one of you two were talking. I can't remember which one it was, but another scene that stuck out to me that I really, really appreciated was just the banter between it was Chandler actually who had the great one-liner as he's talking to Borenson and he's saying how he needs more champions, to hold the gate. He needs another champion to take all these endowments, and the way he poses the question to Sir Borenson as if he's offering him something great, he goes, "So, how about it? Want to die young?"
Yeah.
And I had a moment where I just stopped and chuckled. I was like, that's great. I like that line. That was a great one-liner right there. So I guess that's an honorable mention for me, was that little throwaway laugh that I had in the middle of this huge dark situation. Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of our time here.
Yep.
Before we go to the final draft, do we have any, just sort of last thoughts as we wrap up this series?
I have a few. I just have my notes open in front of me, so I can just choose any of them, of the odd ones here. Raj Otten. I didn't really talk much about Raj Otten, but it was really cool to see his rise to glory there near the end as he prepared at least for battle. He pulled all the heat from the Flame Weavers into himself.
Oh, yeah.
And then he had what I consider to be one of the most badass lines in all of epic fantasy so far. And I know I say that a lot, but this one was cool. He said, "Fear not, for I will vanquish all of your foes. My sword will fall upon the earth, and night shall be no longer." And that was a serious moment of chills I got in my spine. I was like, oh, man, he's such a well-written antagonist.
Yes.
He really is. So that was just an honorable mention that I wanted to get aside there, was that moment with Raj Otten. I don't know what the hell was going on with those good glories that kind of came to Gaborn's aid there at the very end to deal with the one true master.
The regular glories, not the Darkling glories.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I guess, and I hope that we'll get a lot more, information about them going on in the second arc, like the Signs of the Earth series. But I will say, in that moment when Gaborn was fighting the one true master, I was rooting for him. I was like, okay, he's going to find a way. And then suddenly all these lights start appearing, all these glories start speaking to him. And the glories are the ones that end up, technically it was Binisman's Wild that ended up killing the one true master. But I was just very confused in that scene, and it didn't quite land for me. In such an important climactic moment, I was confused because we hadn't seen these regular glories before. I guess
we did.
We very briefly saw one a few chapters earlier, but in that scene, I was like, what the hell are these things, and how are they helping, and where are they coming from, and why? Okay, and then they just did most of the work, and then in comes the Wild and finishes the job. But I'm still left kind of confused. So I think for that alone, I'm gonna want to read more. So maybe he's accomplished his purpose.
So my kind of last little topic that I wanted to touch on is actually the Wild, which we didn't talk about at all in this book.
Sure.
And how she gets unbound, and just disappears for like 3/4 of the book. She's just gone.
Oh yeah.
And then shows up, and against all expectation, she doesn't fight like we'd been seeing her fight Reavers for 2 books.
For sure.
She basically just shows up and turns into a tree.
Yeah, she shows up and goes, "Watch this, everybody!" Boom! And she just turns into a giant tree that just obliterates the one.
Didn't Varen reach out to her?
Varen did. She called the Wild. But Jarrod just kind of stole my point from me. That the way she kills the one true master, kills the Reaver one true master, is she pulls a green man from the Wheel of Time.
Yep, I was waiting to bring up that point. I think we were all three about to bring that up. Thank you. And again, loosely on the subject of the Wild, I want to go back to Binisman really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. When he died, and I say died with air quotes for those who can't see, I didn't buy it for a second. I knew he was going to be fine. As soon as, just merely the fact that they had to leave him behind made me go, oh, so he's going to show up in the nick of time and save Gaborn's whole party and their retinue, or maybe just Gaborn's life himself. I didn't expect for him to show up topside, of all places.
Yeah. I mean, you knew he had to, transition to winter, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was what I had written down here in my notes when I said, I knew it, in all caps. I knew it. I knew Binisman wasn't dead. It was the fact that they had to leave him behind that made me decide he was going to live on. Also, he hasn't shown what his winter's colors would be. I did think he was going to show up in a moment of peril for Gaborn or save him or his party. Wasn't expecting him to show up topside of all places. But what I really want to know is, as soon as he showed up topside, he claimed that as soon as he was healed, he had matters to the east that he mentioned having to tend to before showing up. And I don't know if that was ever covered or if that's going to be covered later. But what were these matters to the east?
I was under the impression that he brought the Warlords of Internook. That he went to the Courts of Tide and
that would
told
make
them
sense.
to sail to Karis.
Okay. Good. Okay. I'm going to take that as fact, pending further investigation, because that was bothering me, so thank you.
But yeah, I do agree with you. I think it was pretty telegraphed that he was coming back, especially because of the circumstances and what specifically they did with him. Because it's the exact same thing that happened to Murima. She was given a deadly blow and was consigned to the element for which she is a magician, a wizard. So you put her in the water, she gets healed, and she comes back. You put Binisman in the earth, he gets healed, and he comes back. So...
Yeah, I want to give a really quick shout out to the Concert of Shadows once again too, and how clever his one move was when he decided to kidnap Averin rather than simply kill her. Because, and I don't know if he did this on purpose, he likely did, I think, with his cunning intelligence, but he captured her instead of killing her because I guess Gaborn would have been able to sense her danger, wouldn't he? That's why Gaborn was caught completely by surprise, because I suppose the Consort of Shadows, from the beginning in that ambush, was planning not to kill her, but to capture her. So Gaborn's danger sense was completely, nullified. Yep.
So, I think that about wraps up.
About wraps up all my thoughts for, the fourth book of the Runelords series, The Lair of Bones.
Jarrod?
You guys want to... the only thing I was going to add is just kind of a series wrap-up kind of thing, but I don't really feel like there's a weak book in the series. I kind of remember having read this years ago, thinking that Wizardborn was the weak point in the series, but on the second read-through, it really wasn't.
Yeah,
if I had to choose one, I would guess the second book, I think.
My favorite is still Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Really?
But I don't think there's a weak point.
Yeah, so going into this,
you would have a weak point. Yeah.
Brotherhood of the Wolf was my favorite, and coming out of it, I think it still is, but it very narrowly edges out Wizardborn. I was extraordinarily impressed with Wizardborn this time around.
Well, yeah, so was I. I mean, this is my first time, but I was definitely impressed with it. I guess maybe and this is kind of a picky thing for me to say, but I guess maybe the main reason I wasn't so impressed with book 2, it's such a small, stupid thing, but the name of the book didn't make sense until the last page.
Yeah.
See, I like
maybe that kind of disenfranchised me a little bit. I was like, okay. That's kind of how I left that book off, but it could be that I'm just not remembering a huge majority of that book.
Mm-hmm. I just think
for me it was, I think Wizardborn was the best one for me. I'll say this one. The pacing of this one was superb.
As a 4-book arc, I think it was very well wrapped up.
Yep. It kind of, to me, feels a little bit unfinished, but that feels intentional. It doesn't feel like I'm missing out on anything so much as I just still need to continue. So that's about everything I have to say about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I have had one more thing.
Oh,
I think it's one of the best magic systems.
Oh, certainly.
Oh my god, for sure. It's definitely not a soft magic. I think, as Sanderson classifies it, it's got its hard rules. there's not a whole lot of just out of nowhere shortcuts with the magic system that don't really make a lot of sense, you know.
Yeah.
Good kind. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed the magic system. I see, Drew, why you recommended this one, why Brandon Sanderson recommends it. It's definitely a solid magic system with solid world building, and I do look forward to doing the second arc, Scions of the Earth, eventually, for sure.
Yeah, not anytime soon. Probably we have a lot of stuff to get to before then.
It's not on the forecast for the next few episodes for sure, but I definitely do want to cover these in the future at some date.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, you guys want to head into the final draft?
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay.
Rob, kick us off.
Okay, so I totally forgot to get a beer for this episode until about 10 minutes before we started recording. So I really, really quickly ran to the grocery store. I actually managed to find one in under a minute that was kind of thematically appropriate. Over the court. Oh, wait, hold on. It's very dark in here. I'm going to use my flashlight to find where oh, nope. I have the can right here. I am drinking today a Bone Shaker Unfiltered India Pale Ale. That, of course,
good choice.
I say it's thematically appropriate because we are covering a book today called The Lair of Bones. It's an IPA. It's pretty strong, if you can't tell by my slurring here. 7.1%. Very, very hoppy. Very, very sour. Dark, but delicious. And you know what? Knowing how strong it is, I think I will buy it again because it did the trick.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you
Jarrod.
guys.
So mine is not thematically appropriate with the book, but is definitely my style, as we have seen over these episodes. Mine is called Dragon's Milk.
Dragon's Milk. That's pretty metal, man. I love it.
It is a barrel-aged stout, bourbon barrel-aged stout, that is 11%.
You really like your dark beers, eh? Your stouts?
Oh, definitely a stout guy, so...
Nice.
Quite good. Highly recommended.
Dragon's Milk. I want to name like a...
If you have to drive, though, you're somewhat limited to one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And Drew, what are you drinking today?
So I did have something thematically appropriate, similar to Rob's. I have a sour ale from Firestone Walker called Creaky Bones.
Creaky Bones?
And that is Creek as in like the Belgian style, the fermented fruit beer, cherry beer. It's spelled Kriek.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So this is a sour ale brewed with cherries, aged in French oak barrels. It is very sour. If you're into sour beers, if you want something that's really gonna smack your tongue around, this is gonna do the trick for you. It hits hard up front with all that sour cherry and finishes with a really nice oaky flavor. It's not my best thematic alignment, but I think it was appropriate for Lair of Bones nonetheless.
That's good. That's
fair.
fair.
We're gonna keep up this thematic alignment.
Creek.
Oh yes.
How long is this gonna go on?
I'm just glad that I managed to find one in less than a minute today. I saw the word bone in my peripheral vision. Went there it is, right there. Bone Shaker. I was like, perfect. 7.1%. Get it in me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So are we about wrapping up this episode 10 of the Inking Out Loud podcast?
Yeah, I think we are. As usual, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Next time up, we're going to be covering A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, we are.
I have not read that. Rob has. We're going to have a different special guest on for that one. Who has also read that book, so I'm going to be the newbie on that one. But, so as usual, I am your host, Drew McCaffrey, and with me, your co-host, Rob Santos, and our
What's up?
Very special guest, Jarrod Livingston.
Yo!
All right.
So, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.